Hey everyone, welcome. So we're talking some athletics. It's obviously ongoing. I don't know to what extent, the time difference, it feels very far away, but today is a good day for a check-in from an Irish point of view. We don't always storm these championships. They've been on the go for 50 years and we've won 6 medals, so it's not unqualified success. But as we record on Thursday afternoon, from an Irish point of view, and we will get on to the more global stories, but obviously we're all a little bit navel-gazy when it comes to athletics. From an Irish point of view, a slow-ish start, but it has burst to life today, Thursday, because Cian McPhillips from Longford has put in a really amazing performance in the 800 metres semi-final. Now, this would be the event where for many years Mark English in the men's has toiled. And to be fair to him, I mean, English, an extraordinary athlete. He probably doesn't get the credit he deserves, keeps a low profile in this country. He set a new Irish record just last month. But Cian McPhillips today won the semi-final, is into the final with an Irish record-breaking performance. The final's on Saturday. He was fifth at the bell and then a really brilliant closing kick. So just to give you a sense, have a listen. This is closing lap. We'll pick it up here where he's in kind of second, third place, about to kick for home. Greg Allen, of course, of RTE, is calling the closing stages. Have a listen.
So Kian McFillips now punching himself into a position, into second place. So far, it's a beautifully run tactical race. All he has to do now is hold his position. Pernici of Italy is an athlete that I think Kian McFillips has the measure of. Does he have the measure of Max Bergen? Kick hard now, Kian McFillips, and he is kicking hard. The math student is getting his calculation right. Oh, absolutely wonderful from Kian McFillips. Oh, not just as he got into the final, he's done it like he did in his heat. He has stormed away in the last 20 metres, and just look at this, 143.18, an Irish record, and he did it in a negative split race. He went through in around 52 seconds dead, and he's just run a 51 on the back of it. That is way beyond astonishing. I don't have a word for it.
I'll go with good. Definitely good. Cathal Dennehy is in Tokyo, the brilliant Cathal Dennehy. Hey, how are you?
Good, good. Energized by all that happened tonight, so jet lag well shaken off.
Yeah. So look, I'm going to fess up. Do not know much about Cian McPhillips. Talk to us.
Yeah, and no shame in that because most wouldn't know much about Kian McPhillips outside of the kind of athletic nerddom kingdom that I inhabit. He was a big talent coming up through his teenage years, a real outlying talent, a kind of a Rashida Adelecki talent. He was European under-20 champion at 1500 meters back in 2021. He would have went over at the age of 15 or 16 to the Millrose Games and beaten a lot of the best US high school milers at that age group. Where he struggled with, and the reason so many people wouldn't know him, is that he went to UCD. He studied, I think it was some form of physics that was incredibly complicated, and I can't even remember it, even though he told me a half an hour ago. But basically, it was a severe academic workload, and he just struggled with it. He struggled to balance the level of work he had to do for that with that kind of elite level training you need to be doing at the ages of 19, 20, 21. Big adjustments in his life. He had a few injuries, few illnesses at the wrong time. It basically meant that for those few years, transitioning from teenage up to where he is now at 23, he kind of just didn't produce the performances that his talent indicated. He's been with the same coach all along, Joe Ryan, who's done a brilliant job, and Martina McCarthy, paid credit to her tonight in terms of the work he's been doing in the gym to strengthen up. And we saw his mechanics there coming down the last 100 meters were absolutely textbook. And he's just really struck a brilliant balance this year, I think, in his life, in his career, in his education. I think he said he's 2 years left in his education, and now it's not as difficult, I suppose, in terms of the workload as it was before. But he also hasn't had a consistent year, and that might be a blessing in disguise for him in a roundabout way, because he went to the European indoors earlier this year, fell over in the heat, picked up an injury. He ran on that injury in the semi-final. That was a bad idea, basically, because he ended up sustaining a more severe injury, missed 11 weeks of training, so pretty much 3 months. And he just hammered the cross training. He told me he was doing 2.5 to 3 hours on the elliptical machine every day during that period, in addition to all his rehab and gym work, which just gives you an idea. No 800-meter runner, if they were healthy in training, would be doing that amount of kind of endurance aerobic training. But what that has done for him now that he's healthy, really since June, he's back racing since July. He basically laid this massive foundation of fitness that he probably never would have done without that injury. And that is now paying off in absolute spades because, we talk about speed in 800 meters, but what determines how well you finish the last 100 in an 800 meters is not so much your raw foot speed. It's about your strength. It's about what percentage of your speed you can draw upon, and basically how much do you have left in the tank. And I think what we're seeing now in those two performances from Cian McPhillips is that he is getting to 600 meters, getting to three-quarters away into the race with a very full tank of gas. And that's why he's finishing so, so strong. And that's why I think he's going to be so, so dangerous in this final, even if he's a big underdog.
Okay. Well, I mean, more excited after that answer, I suppose, because usually the reason for uh, successful youth not transitioning to seniors is going to be some kind of injury. I mean, what an admirable reason that he took on very serious academic studies. So sounds like an impressive fella. But that pedigree that you talk about is very promising, and the way that's an exciting type of racer, isn't it? Wait till he gets 600 meters from home and watch the kick. I mean, that's what made the win today so exciting, coming from behind, as impressive it is as it is to lead all the way home. And Greg mentioned even the negative split as well. Right, okay. Is this kind of potentially, star of Irish athletics is born without heaping too much pressure on a guy I didn't know yesterday?
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because about 10 minutes after the race, Phelim Kelly, who coached Mark English for many years and coached Andrew Coscoran for many years, and another Irish record holder in Brian Fay, he texted me and he texted me, "A star is born." And he is an astute judge of such things and a man as passionate about Irish athletics as it gets. And yeah, I think that's how I feel about this, and I think the performance was one thing, the time was another thing. The weather was another thing. It was lashing rain in the stadium when he ran that time. Again, it's not going to cost you that much, but it'll cost you a bit of time. That probably would have been sub 143 on a dry track. But the biggest thing I think here to look at, as Greg Allen alluded to, is the negative split. To go through, he went through in, I think, just under 52 seconds. He came home in 51 seconds. It's well established in the 800 meters. 99% of 800-meter runners run the race in the same way. They run their first lap. If you're trying to run it the most efficient way, you tend this goes down to physiological stuff that we won't go too far into the weeds, but basically you run your first lap about 2 seconds faster than your second lap and you just kind of hang on. That's the way it's done to run your fastest time. The fact Cian McPhillips has flipped that and he's run a negative split and he's finished the way he has and he's run 143.1 in the rain, faster than any Irishman in history. That to me indicates that he can run 142.5 at worst, and if not low 142. And if you go into any final in any championship in the history of athletics in 142 form, which he quite clearly is in right now, you're automatically a medal contender. And look, he's going to be an underdog. There's 3 Olympic medalists in there. There's other men who've run 142. But I think the biggest thing is the way he's finishing his races. It's a bit of potluck. You never know. A lot of times that sort of endurance element, that base I was talking about, a fitness, that can run out by the time sometimes you get to the final. There's cumulative fatigue. 3 races in 5 days can get quite difficult. But I mean, he finished that race stronger than anyone. And if he gets himself in the right position at 600, like I said, nothing is off the table here in terms of what he might do in that final.
Great. Great. Saturday, about 20 past 2 Irish time. And just one last one on him. What kind of personality is he, Caller? Have you met him down the years?
Yeah, I've known him, probably talked to him, not in depth, like, but talked to him in many, many mixed zones over the years. He's just very laid back. He's hyper intelligent, as you'll know from the various academic pursuits he's going after, but just very laid back, very down to earth. And to be honest, he's the perfect personality to be undergoing what is really a seismic transformation in his career overnight here, because half of Ireland will know his name by Saturday afternoon, having almost no one really know his name before this.
Mm.
And I think he is just he's not the kind of guy who's going to be staying up tonight looking at Instagram half the night and just like wired with his achievement and going, "Oh my God, look who's talking about me." He's very laid back, very calm, head in his shoulders, taking it all in his stride. And as he told me a while ago, he's just basically feels that this is now a free shot and he's not really nervous about this because the worst case scenario now is that he finishes 8th in the world, which he thinks is great, but clearly he's capable of a lot more.
Okay, amazing. A star is born. And I think we kind of needed it over here because obviously, with time difference and everything else, it does feel a long way away. You know, you compare it to Rome or the Olympics in recent times, prime time. It's not quite that same feel for us. Slow-ish start for Ireland. You know, like the 4x400 meters mixed team, which has been such a kind of focal point, missing several bodies, didn't run brilliantly in the heats, 3.6 seconds down on the national record they ran in Rome. To her immense credit, Sarah Healy, 10th in the 1500 metres final on Tuesday night. That is a classic achievement we all overlook. It's shocking, 10th in the world, and there's not enough fanfare about it. Sophie O'Sullivan was 12th in her semi-final. Charlene Maudsley reached semi-finals in the 400 metres. Sarah Lavin, 3rd in her hurdles semi-final, didn't make the final. I suppose the one to give very, very honourable mention to as well is Fionnuala McCormack, called 9th in the marathon. Had to be told she was 9th by David Gillick having finished, and she was pleasantly surprised to hear that news. 41 years of age, temperatures 30 degrees, humidity 72%. She's a remarkable, remarkable athlete who just keeps doing it year after year after year. So give us a word on Fionnuala.
Yeah, I mean, Fionnuala is I would say she's certainly the most underappreciated, almost unheralded at times, star of Irish athletics, and one of the most underappreciated, I'd say, people in Irish sport, just because she is so media shy. She told me before, I'd rather talk about something I've done rather than something I'm going to do. So she'd never sit down for an interview with you ahead of a championship, and even after a championship, she'd be like, "Oh, no, I prefer not to do that."
It's in the past. It's in the past now. I mean, there's a way out of
Exactly.
everything. Yeah.
Exactly. But as she said to me, she's just a private person, she doesn't own a smartphone. She never has social media. And at times at the peak of her career, when she was winning European cross countries, she was sort of getting some of those brand partnerships and dragged kicking and screaming probably into one of those round tables for interviews and things like the Late Late Show and that. But she hated all that. It wasn't who she was. And I think as she's matured and she's become a mother, of course, of 3 daughters, I think she's just said, I don't need any of that. I'm not going to try and earn an extra 10 or 20 grand for myself and just shilling myself out in the corporate sphere and stuff. I'm just going to do the sport for the reason I started the sport, as she said to me. And it was just for the joy of it and extracting the most out of herself. And to think that she's now doing that she turns 41 this week, 18 years on from her first World Championships, is just astonishing longevity. She'd run a lot of marathons at Olympic and World Championships before. They'd never quite clicked for her. She'd always been outside the top 20. And Fionnuala had finished 5th in the Chicago Marathon. That's definitely a performance that would equate to a top 10 at the World or Olympics. And of course, we saw Sinead Diver, the Mayo woman running for Australia, was 10th at the Tokyo Olympics in the marathon. So that's the kind of performance that Fionnuala was waiting for. And it finally happened here in Tokyo, and she was saying, as I said to her, I was like, I bet you were waiting and watching that weather forecast and wishing that it was awful. And she was like, yeah, the worse the better. Because it's not that Fionnuala performs better in horrible conditions. It's just that the amount it affects her because of how mentally resilient she is much less than everyone else. So as bodies were dropping all around her, falling to pieces, she was just digging in and slicing through the field all the way up to 9th in the world. And having been the only Irish woman in history to have gone to compete at 5 Olympic Games, it has very much opened the door now to go on another 3 years. If she wants to, she'll be 43 in Los Angeles 2028 and make it 6.
Amazing. Amazing. Just to be very clear about it, though, Cathal and I are willing to shill ourselves in the corporate sector. So
any price.
Just all inquiries welcome. Before we move on to kind of the marquee events or non-Irish, is there anyone else you want to mention or that I've overlooked or you want to earmark for the coming days?
I think Andrew Coscoran is one that we didn't mention there, made the final, or maybe you did mention him.
No, I didn't.
Deeply fatigued here in the stadium. But yeah, no, that's him. I mean, that's never happened before. Irish man and Irish woman in a global 1500 meter final at the World or Olympics. So that's a breakthrough performance, in terms of, there's been a lot of breakthroughs, like there's been the disappointment at the mixed relay not making the final, but a lot of the marquee events here, it's amazing, that in the absence of Rashida Adelecki, and of course Cian McGeehan, the two athletes who you said, they're the people who can really make an impact. They have the talent to make an impact. this kind of other generation are now stepping up, and they're obviously of the same generation, but they would have been kind of the semi-final kind of crew are now stepping up and making finals. Sarah, obviously, Andrew did it, and now Cian McPhillips, which is just a complete bolt from the blue. And of course, Kate O'Connor is still to come. She's getting started tomorrow in the heptathlon. And there's been some funky results this week. It would not surprise me if come Saturday afternoon, Ireland has two live medal contenders in the space of an hour. Kate O'Connor, that heptathlon will be finishing at 1:10 on Saturday afternoon, Irish time. 70 minutes later, Kian McFillips will be on track for the 800-meter final. And that could be one of the most remarkable hours or so in Irish athletics history. I'm not saying they're both going to win a medal or even one of them will win a medal.
Sure.
But there's every chance both of them will be medal contenders in that space of time.
Oh no, listen, that is good to earmark. So maybe if it's lashing rain outside or even not, maybe from kind of 12:30 onwards, Saturday, not the worst time to sit down for 90 minutes. Kate O'Connor and Kian McFillips. In terms of the more, the global marquee events that maybe punch through regardless of nationality, Armand Mondo Duplantis, his 14th world record in 5 years, the Swede, who is maybe the superstar in world athletics, or certainly one of them. He won the event with his first effort, and then on his third attempt, he broke the world record for many reasons. He's faster than other male pole vaulters. That helps. The thing I read about Duplantis a couple of months ago, Carl, you'd know more about this, but it was like I had to kind of doff my cap to his capitalist instincts. And in effect, it was every time he breaks a world record, he gets a huge bonus. It can be up to 6 figures. So rather than him saying to himself, I could be at my peak now, I could get injured in a year, I'm just going to try and break the record by the most amount possible. He has staggered how much he's breaking the world record by. And therefore, every time he does it, he gets another, fairly sizable bonus. So, 14 times in 5 years, if you're getting somewhere between 50 and 100 grand per world record, well, I can't but be amazed at the ingenuity. Is that stacks up? That's what he's doing here, yeah?
Yeah, and he's getting at least that. That would be the baseline in terms of his bonuses added up. If you break a record at something like a big championship like this, World Athletics give you a fat bonus, and then Puma, his sponsor, will also give him a major bonus for each world record that I think would be probably 6 figures. But yeah, that's what he's doing, and it makes perfect sense to me. And I think it's good for Duplantis. There is a part of you that thinks, okay, how high can you go if you just chuck the bar up to the maximum? And yeah, there's probably another maybe 8 to 10 centimeters there on the perfect day, but one, that doesn't make him as much money, but two, I think for the sport, it's a better thing that he breaks it 1 centimeter at a time, because I watched him break a record in China earlier this year, and 30,000 Chinese people get to go home and they saw the greatest of all time break a world record. He did it in Paris last year, and it was one of the moments of the Olympics. If he put it up 10 centimeters then everyone in this stadium here in Tokyo, the 60,000 people, wouldn't have had that moment the other night, which was the best moment of the championships so far. So he's creating these mega impact moments, not just for the people who pay to come and watch him, but also for the sport to just break out of its little bubble that it is often in, and gives oxygen and just makes the people and the wider public aware of just what a superstar he is.
Yeah, and I can see all that. And to your knowledge, are there any old timers or former pole vaulters or fellow competitors who are uneasy about it and think it's making a mockery of what sport is about? You do your best on the day and spare me the greed and the money.
No, because I think it's just the way it always goes. Even if the high jump, say if you were trying to break the high jump world record, and say it's like 209 or whatever for women, you'd put it to 210. You wouldn't just put it up 2 centimeters. You'd try and break it by the smallest amount. And yeah, they're all on the same page, and the pole vault people are all very much on the same page with that. And this is exactly what Sergei Bubka did back in the 1980s. He just kept breaking world records, kept cashing those checks, and kept giving the fans happy moments.
Okay. Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone won gold in the women's 400 meters Thursday today, running the second fastest time ever. And everybody knows she's extraordinary and she's kind of the athlete of the day in many ways. It's always that amazing thing when I saw she's run the second fastest time ever. I jumped quickly to see, is this a 1980s record? And of course it is. And that is such a I say interesting as if it's kind of a good thing, but it is this interesting dynamic in a lot of these female categories in particular. So you'll know more about this than me, I'm sure. But so she's 0.18 seconds shy of the world record. This was set by Marita Koch, East German athlete. She ran her time in 86 in Australia. Now, interesting, Koch is 58 now, and she says she never failed a drugs test. Her conscience is clear. She's always maintained she did nothing wrong. But obviously, East Germany, and to, in her case, the Stasi, when they handed over all the records, because they were the ones administering the drugs, and the information was published, Koch was implicated, and she threatened to sue when she was named publicly, but never did sue. And so the record stands, and it's just that thing of the modern day athlete has been chasing down these 1980s records forever. Or sorry, since the
Yeah,
1980s, since the 1980s to be more specific, but it feels like
yeah.
forever.
It's a record that haunts the sport, to be honest, in terms of, yes, you can deny it as much as you want, but we know that there was systematic doping in your country. So it's scarcely credible to think that um, this performance that is just plucked from an absolute different stratosphere that just makes no sense to anyone who knows women's athletics and, women's performances and what makes sense and what doesn't. 47.60 has just always been so out there. Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone is the most talented female athlete I've ever seen, for sure. Certainly female sprinter. She is the Usain Bolt. When you look at her, and this isn't like to 100% say, oh, she's definitely clean or, anything like that, because we never know, of course, and it's always a guessing game. But, I remember watching Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone's videos of her when she was 14, 15, and she was that Usain Bolt figure. She grew up in New Jersey, just doing absolutely outrageous things, ran in the Olympics at 16, and there's not many athletes ever, make the Olympics at 18. She made them at 16. And it was always just a matter of time, right? If she stays healthy. She actually did a year under Coach Flo, who coaches Rashida, of course, when he used to be at the University of Kentucky, moved onward. She's now with Bobby Kersey. He has a bit of an iffy record that dates back to the 1980s. Since then, through the 90s and 2000s, there's never been a stain, but there has been stuff in the 80s. Now, obviously, the 80s was a period where athletics was absolutely poisoned with doping, where you had the Eastern Bloc countries and then the US were stepping up against them, I suppose, in an arms race, a pharmacological arms race, I should say. But because of that, that record has just stayed there untouched, untroubled. And I would say people will probably be watching Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone and wondering, is she clean? Like, and again, I don't know, but I'll just give a bit of an insight for athletics. And I would say, like, what will be on her side is that I would absolutely bank that her level of talent is in a completely different stratosphere to Marita Koch. And then you have way better track surfaces, way better training methodologies, way better nutrition, way better spikes, and yet she's still way off it. So I think if she was eating steroids every morning with her cornflakes, I think Celia McLaughlin-Levrone would be the type of athlete who would be running much faster than 47.60. The fact she's not is encouraging. Now, she's obviously entering territory that very few female athletes have ever been in. But I would say in her defense that she is that rare, absolute outlying talent that this kind of performance, a sub 48-second 400 meters, is achievable for her without drugs.
Okay. That's some statement, by the way. McLaughlin-Levrone, the most, do you say, talented female
Yeah.
athlete you've ever seen?
Yeah, she's the Usain Bolt of the
Yeah.
female athletics, she's just a complete, and that goes from the age of 15, 16, 17, all the way. She was just in a completely different universe to her peers ever since she was a
Yeah.
high schooler in New Jersey.
Um, like in a completely perverse way, the hunting down of the Koch record and the other 80s records, it is compelling, and it's in like the grimness of it, you couldn't overstate. But um, it'll be such a celebratory day if I know what you're saying, that you can only hope and presume that people are clean now when they're doing great things, but that would be such a celebrated day if she could break Koch's record. That would be history.
Yeah, it would. It would be a great day for the sport, I think. And there's other athletes, Salwa Nasser has a whereabouts failure. She won a bronze medal tonight. There's other athletes that would very much not be supported, but I would say you would see it, and you see it in the way when Duplantis breaks a world record. There is belief in him and there is faith in him in the sport, and I think generally across the board that is what you would see if Sidney McLaughlin-Levrone does eventually get that record. But it's so far out there that it's going to be difficult.
Right. Okay. So it's still very. It's not like she's hunting it down necessarily. It's still
No,
difficult.
and she has targeted specifically the 400, this year and dropped the hurdles and
Yeah.
trained for this. This has been her life's work, and she's now at her absolute peak, and she still hasn't got it.
Yeah. The men's 1500 meters final is quite possibly worth a word.
Yeah, absolute chaos. Talking to Steve Cram was actually down in the bathroom about 10 minutes before the final, and I just said, Steve, give me your 1, 2, 3. And then I think he had 2 of the Brits in the top 3, and then Laros. And just, that's someone who has been there and done that back in the 80s and won a world title and has spent the last 40 years as an expert. And he was way wrong. I was way wrong. Everyone got this incredibly wrong, and it just was evidence of sports capacity to throw up the unbelievable, the unexpected. You would have got astronomical odds if you went into Paddy Powers and asked what odds that Josh Kerr and Niels Laros don't make the podium. Neither of them get a medal. They looked almost certain to be on the podium in whatever order. But the 1500, was just chaos. I mean, Jake Whiteman came back. He ran an amazing race. Everyone would have been delighted to see him win. And then Isaac Nader, just, I guess you have to hand it to him. He came from 5th to 1st over the last 100 meters and took victory. He was finished 10th, I think, in the last Diamond League. No one, absolutely no one, probably his own coach wasn't even predicting he was going to come away with the victory, but he did it. And when I think about the men's 800 meter final on Saturday, just to go back to this for a moment, and you think about, the 3 Olympic medalists look the big 3, Sejati, Arop, and Emmanuel Wanyonyi. But then you think of the men's steeplechase, complete shock result. The men's 10K, complete shock result, shock podium. And then, of course, the men's 1500, complete shock podium. So when I think about Kian McFillips, and, you might say, okay, maybe you'd have him 4th or 5th best going in, but you just think there's been chaos at these championships often already. We might see chaos again on Saturday afternoon.
Sport always has the capacity to capture a moment in time. And I suppose for a lot of people, these World Championships, in part, will be remembered for Mohammed Dwidar, who's 24 years of age. He is the only Palestinian competitor at these games. I mean, it's a miracle there's one. So in Tokyo on Tuesday night, he was in his 800 meter heat and he finished last. He didn't qualify for the games on merit as such. World Athletics granted him a universality place, which are given out to nations that don't have qualified athletes in a bid to kind of encourage global participation. But his story would it would stop you in your tracks, no pun intended. His home city is Jericho in the West Bank, and he was based there until July. But obviously things are just dire in that part of the world. He relocated to Germany with the help of the federation so he could train for these World Championships. And you couldn't but spot it was something that the day he ran was the very day the United Nations came out this week and categorized what is happening as genocide, plain and simple. And he was asked about that, obviously, and just, stop, please stop. I need to cry. I can't stop. That's all. And he said, any more training trips abroad will only be temporary. My family live in Palestine. I can't live outside of Palestine. In the end, I go back to Palestine. This is my country, my city. Did the significance of him running in the heat, did it register with the stadium call? Was that a moment, or did it pass by kind of unnoticed?
I'll be honest, I was down in the mixed zones.
Yeah.
I missed that moment.
Yeah,
It was
it's
tough to
the
watch
nature of these
back.
things. Yeah.
But I didn't really. Do you know what appalled me? And it disgusted me, to be honest. I think there's about 2,000 journalists here in Tokyo. It's over 1,000 anyway. There were 6 journalists down there to talk to Mohammed Dwidar on the day the United Nations inquiry had said there's a genocide, and he's the only athlete. And I've been obviously going to athletics events, and this is my 7th World Championships back since Moscow in 2013. And I've been to so many events since the Russian invasion of Ukraine 3.5 years ago now. And I used to stand in the mix zone and you would see the floods of journalists coming down for the likes of Yaroslava Mahuchik, the Ukrainian high jumper, or any Ukrainian. And there would be story after story after story, correctly so, probably, because it was a fascinating topic about Ukrainian athletes, what they were dealing with, where their families were, everything. And then I was expecting the same here for the one Palestinian. And maybe you could say it wasn't flagged up. He's not a very accomplished athlete. But I just thought, surely this is going to be a big story. You know, everyone from the major news outlets all around the world are here in Tokyo. Surely they're going to want to talk to this guy um, who lives in Palestine. They didn't. And I was down there and there was a Pakistani female journalist and we were talking to each other afterwards and we were just saying like, that's quite sickening. It's quite sickening to see the sort of attitude to this in sport. And you could say, okay, everyone's busy, of course, journalists doing other jobs. But then you think, hang on a second, we have a great example here of a very similar situation of a war 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. And you see all the Ukrainian athletes and you see these stories being sent out to the world correctly about what the Ukrainian athletes are dealing with. And then you just had this guy coming through and there were 6 of us there. And I found that puzzling and extremely troubling and really indicative of why we're in this situation as a world to start with.
Hmm. Okay. Um, as you go, anything else you want to mention to us, or we should look out for next few days?
Yeah, I think Kate O'Connor is going to give people who give that the time. I'm aware that the multi events are never going to be the glamour events. You know, it's complex. It's a point system. There's 7 events. She'll do 4 of them on tomorrow evening, which will be tomorrow morning and early afternoon Irish time. The other 3 will follow on Saturday, and I think Kate O'Connor is probably looking towards a top 6 position. But you know, we've seen some funky stuff in
Yeah, yeah.
Tokyo, and as I mentioned, Belgium's Nafi Thiam she's the Olympic champion. She's currently at war with her federation over about getting into a training camp over a contractual dispute. They're slinging mud at each other in the media at the moment. You know, Katrina Johnson Thompson, the world champion, is coming in with very questionable form. The one rock solid athlete is USA's Anna Hall. So while you might have Kate O'Connor down as maybe the 5th or 6th or 7th seeded athlete for that heptathlon, it wouldn't surprise me at all if she kind of produced a performance that has her knocking on the door, perhaps of a bronze medal, because she is in the form of her life. Everything has gone well on the build up, and she is an absolutely clutch performer. So I would say to people, if you get a chance to turn on RTE or BBC in the coming days at that time, tomorrow and
Still.
Saturday, it will be well worth the investment to give that time, because as we look towards LA in 3 years' time, Kate O'Connor is progressing into a medal contender there, and this may be where she, you know, truly shines on the global outdoor stage.
Super. Listen, man, always so good. Appreciate the time. I know you're busy, Cathal Dennehy. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Joe. Pleasure.